So, what I'd like to get started with is, first of all, I'd like you to tell me a little bit, tell me the name of your film, so everyone knows what that is. Tell me a little bit about the film, and then let me know what you did on the film specifically.
Sure, absolutely. So, um, well, my name is Sergio Guerra, and I am the filmmaker behind Do You See It? Which is a fun tale, which I wrote and directed, and I acted in as well, and composed the score, and I shot it also. So I guess I wore many hats. But the thing is, it's one of those things where, I mean, I don't want to get ahead of the questions or anything like that, but
You're good.
It's one of those things where you're stuck in quarantine, as we were saying, right? And you're home, and you're if you're lucky, you're sort of trapped indoors with somebody you really like, or that's a good thing, right? I happen to really love and like my wife, so so that wasn't so bad, but we're also sort of like two restless creative spirits, and we can't be cooped up for too long without just wanting to do stuff, and create things, that is.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where I'd just be sitting there and I'd be like, "You want to make something? Why don't we make something?" I mean, we've got all this time now. It'd be silly to just not do anything with it. I mean, and I know people did all kinds of wonderful things during quarantine. They learned, some people learned a new language or something, a musical instrument, took some classes, whatever. Some people just meditated, watched Netflix, whatever it is that people enjoy. They did. And so, but for us, we certainly did our fair share of all of that stuff, by the way. Certainly not passing judgment on any of that. But we get restless. We get creatively restless, and it's like we got to do something. We can't just sit on our hands. I've got we have some gear in the house. It's nothing that I'm not I don't have a red camera in my garage or anything like that, or but it is still, if you have just any sort of gear lying around the house at all, you know what I mean, then that's enough. That's the way I always felt, was a camera and a light, let's go. You know what I mean? Like, don't be intimidated by, oh, I can't get I can't get my normal DP that I work with, I can't get the normal sound person I work with. It's like, no, it's not about that. Let's see if we can tell the best story we can within these limitations. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, that's how, it's funny. I realized that I've been talking sort of endlessly for the last couple of minutes. I hope I answered the question. I feel like I moved on to like question 2 or 3 also, but yes, that's sort of how, that's the film I did. And that's sort of, yes, those were my responsibilities on said film.
No, that's perfectly fine, because one of the questions I was going to ask you, as we're talking, you were saying you made this during quarantine. So, there are some challenges with that. What were some of the challenges that you faced making this film during our whole quarantine period?
I'll show you challenge number 1. It's to my left, right over my shoulder. That is my daughter. That's that's not actually her, but the likeness is very it's very eerie how much that looks like her. I'm actually filming this in her room right now. She's 23 months now, but during the time of filming, which was last year, she was a beautiful handful, as small children, small toddlers, babies, whatever you want to call it, tend to be. And that was challenge number 1, was okay, so we want to make a movie in our house during quarantine, but we have a baby. So how do we do that? And besides making her the star of the film, which I contemplated for a minute, I was like, well, we could just do that. I don't know too many, I guess at the time, 10-month-old, 11-month-olds that act on cue, though. So that might have been a tough order. But yeah, that was the biggest, that was challenge number 1, was, okay, where do we find the time to do it within quarantine, while we're both working from home and we're raising a small child, so that was difficult. And basically what it meant was since I was really like the production guy, like I mentioned, I wrote it and I directed it and I shot it. I kind of just prepped all day when I had slow hours at work or something, or in the morning, early in the morning, late at night when my wife goes to bed. I just do all my prep work then. I plan out my lighting. I plan out the lenses I was going to use. I planned everything out ahead of time, so like within an inch of its life, because it was one of the lessons I learned early on in like film school was plan. Just the best gift you could ever give yourself as a filmmaker of any magnitude. You're the smallest filmmaker making movies on your iPhone, or you're Spielberg or something, is the more you plan, the better off you're going to be, right? And I'm very much a planner. I love pre-production. And so that sort of was my answer to problem number one was, let me just plan. If I just plan everything within an inch of its life, that's how we're going to get this done. So basically, yeah, the first problem was toddler. The solution was plan. Yeah.
So go ahead. No, go ahead. I want you to finish your thoughts first.
Oh, okay, sure. Absolutely. All right, no problem. So basically, that sort of dovetailed into also the fact that my wife is she's a wonderful collaborator, and she's so creative, so enthusiastic. But a lot of people that are raising small, tiny humans, it's tiring, right? It's very tiring, particularly for moms. Shout out to moms everywhere. That's a full-time job in and of itself, and then she has a full-time job besides that, and then there's this film, and so part of the issue was she isn't really the production person. That's me. But she's the other actor. There are two actors in it. There's two people in the house, me and her. And so it was like, how do we keep her not exhausted? You know what I mean? How do I not push it so that, you know what I mean? Because you want to protect that first and foremost. You want to protect the home life. You want to protect the looking after the baby and all that stuff. That comes first. So it's sort of like, all right, it basically amounted to, I had probably a 90-minute window a night to shoot, which was, that was troublesome, but you make it work. I remember, I'm sorry. In case you haven't noticed, I have a tendency to talk, and
you're good.
I'll move off on other subjects. I remember I was in a job interview once, and I spoke about something about my copywriting background, because I'm a copywriter by day, and I used to work at Snapchat, and I remember in the interview somebody was saying, well, what do you do when something needs to be like done right away, something to that effect, and I was sort of like, well, you just do it. I got used to, at that job, I got used to turning, sometimes you had to turn some copy around in 10 minutes, and they usually wanted it right the first time, but if it wasn't right the first time, better be right the second or third time, so let's get it out the door in 15, 20 minutes, and, it was a little fast paced. It was great. Everybody over there was wonderful. It was such a wonderful team to work with, but, I always had it in my blood that, if you present somebody with a challenge, then you're sort of, actually the challenge is great. The challenge is the best part, because it's like, I understand a challenge. You know what I mean? If you lay it out and you explain exactly what the rules are and how it's going to work, beautiful. You know what I mean? Because then that's something that you can potentially achieve that, or you'll die trying, but whatever, it's like you can see it. It's there right in front of you. The goalposts are right there. It's like, oh, great, this is how I do this, not a problem. And so that sort of training, dovetails into filmmaking, because it's like, all right, I think a lot of filmmakers have been out there probably in situations where it's like, we're shooting outside and we're losing daylight. You have 10 minutes to get this shot, right? The AD taps you on the shoulder. Guess what? You got 10 minutes. What I need 30 minutes. Well, you got 10, but I need 30. you know, do you want me to talk to the sun? Well, I mean, I can try, but I don't think the sun's gonna like wait, you know, like sure, this guy's making an indie short. I'll give him an extra 20 minutes. No, you know, so it's very much, you know, you have to you just have to make it work. It's just sort of like it's like this Zen thing that you lock into, and it's like we got to do it. So 90 minutes a night doesn't sound like very much time, and it's not. But it was one of those things where it's like, all right, since I prepared everything ahead of time, and I knew you know, what lens I was going to use, and I knew how I was going to light it, and I knew what lines we were going to get, coverage. Since I knew everything, then I could just plug her in for 90 minutes. Like, honey, I just need you for 90 minutes, you know, just give me your best 90 minutes. And that's all. And that's it. And then we're done for today. And that's basically what it was. It was night after night. I mean, I think we shot it in about somewhere between 6 to 8 nights, I think.
Okay.
90 minutes.
Ask you that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It definitely wasn't just the one 90-minute session, but it was probably about somewhere between 6 to 8 nights of shooting, 90 minutes at a time.
Wow.
And then, yeah, and you just knock it out, you know? So that was, it was a challenge, but it was challenge accepted, and it was a lot of fun, you know? I find it, you know, there's something about working with limitations that I find really exciting. I don't know why. You know, there's probably something back in my childhood that you know, some therapists could probably pull out. But there's just something about it that I like it when it's like, odds are tough. Boy, how are we going to do this? It's like, beautiful. Let's do it. You know, great. I can't wait. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't know how I'm wired, I guess. So.
Yeah, you had the baby. You had 90 minutes with the wife. You had all your pre-production before she got on set, because she had to be 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you had COVID, so you were in lockdown. So you had to work with all those limitations all at once for this film. Wow.
Yeah.
For 8 nights.
For 8 nights, yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, you know, my wife, you know, is not a professional actress or anything like that, but you know, you have to treat everybody the same, you know. You have to treat everybody, you know, as if they are. And part of that is respecting that anybody that you ask to perform for you, right? It takes a certain amount of energy to perform, right? So it's a certain amount of energy to be a performer, to be an actor. You know, wherever you studied, whatever version of acting you come from, it's just you're giving energy, right? You're giving so much of yourself, and for me, it's like I respect that so much that it doesn't matter if, you know, if it's my wife or if it's Gary Oldman, you know what I mean? It's like you know, you respect the energy that this person requires to give you what you want, right? And part of that is, let me not make it difficult for them in any way. I don't want them worrying about, you know, I'll worry about where the lights go. I'll worry about all that stuff. You know, obviously, if it's not quarantine and you're working with an actual crew, it's not a one man or woman or you know, one person band. Obviously, then it's a different story. But you know, in these times when you are the one person band, you know, that was very most foremost in my mind. You know, I needed to focus 100% on the acting, on the energy in the performance, you know, probably particularly because she's not like a trained performer or anything like that. So it was like especially important that it's like, don't worry about anything. You just do the acting, you focus on that, you think about that. I'll take care of everything else, so that I could really use those 90 minutes. You know what I mean? I could get the best out of her in that 90 minutes.
Yeah. So how was it, since you did all those behind the scenes roles, how difficult was it for you to be in front of the camera for this project?
That was, you know, what's weird, I thought it was going to be hard. I anticipated it to be a struggle. But I think part of that the stuff I was talking about just locking in, that sort of helped that whole stuff, that mindset, where it was just sort of like, has to be done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't consider myself an actor either. I have tremendous respect for actors. I have so much respect for actors, and that's why I wouldn't call myself one, you know. But you know, I did some acting in high school, and part of the curriculum of film school I went to was to take acting classes also.
Yeah.
And so I technically I've done some acting before, or at the very least I understand it because I've performed before and I've done some study. So I know enough about, I have a working knowledge of it to understand what actors go through, which is why they have tremendous, so much respect for what they do and the craft of what they do and how much they bring to a set, you know? And so, but I think because of that, because I did have some training, I was confident that I could just do it. You know, I knew, and that's part of the benefit of sort of writing it too. You know, is it's sort of like, you know, a songwriter traditionally is not going to write notes that they can't sing. Sometimes it happens, but you know, or if they're writing a song for somebody else to sing, they certainly can do that. But if it's the song that they're going to sing, they're going to write it in their range, something that they think they could pull off, right? And it's sort of like that. I wrote something that I felt comfortable enough that I knew I could do it. You know, I was like, I know this guy. I know exactly who this guy is. I can leap into him and I'll be him the second we start going. You know, and yeah. So I actually did. I didn't. I should have been more afraid. This whole thing should have made me more scared. I didn't know why I wasn't. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. But
you like a challenge. You like a challenge, and that's what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I like a challenge. It was fun. It was a fun challenge. It was great. It's a thrill. You know, it's sort of like I remember watching an old interview with Jackie Chan. I think it was on Conan O'Brien back in the 90s, maybe late night with Conan O'Brien days. And they were asking him if he ever gets scared doing the, you know, the pretty intense stunt work that he does. And he said something like, you know, when he hears the whir of the camera, and obviously this is back in the 90s, so people were still shooting on film. He hears the whir of the camera, he just locks in. He's like, I still remember, he said something like, I hear the whir of the camera, and I'm like, not going to die. And then I just go and I do it, you know, like there's just something that's just like, all right, here we go, you know? And I guess that's kind of it, you know? I mean, obviously I'm not comparing myself to Jackie Chan, but I relate to what he's talking about in that sense of you just sort of, I guess you're scared a little bit, but you're so just locked in that it's like, all right, that's fine. Let's just go. Let's give it a shot, you know?
So what were some of the inspirations for this story, since it's it's two paranormal investigators in this thing?
Yes, I should probably say what it's about. So Do You See It is basically about this ghost hunting YouTuber pair that they go from haunted house to haunted house, you know, doing live streams and talking to their followers and engaging with their followers and saying, oh, this is the haunted Taco Bell that, you know, where we hear sounds coming from the bathroom still or something like that. But they stumble upon this house where the family mysteriously just sort of vanished. And it turns out that only one of them, Sandy, can see a demon, and the other one, character I play, Danny, can't. And so we follow through the repercussions of what that means. And a lot of that was born out of, so my wife, she can at times have very intense nightmares. And she will sort of bolt up sometimes in the middle of the night and just be convinced that whatever was after her in the nightmare, you know, you fill in the blank, if it's Freddy Krueger, if it's, you know, whatever, some sort of just monster, a vampire, whatever, right, is in the room with us, you know. And one time in particular, she bolts up in the middle of the night, right? We're all from a dead sleep. We're both in a kind of a dead sleep. She bolts right upright, you know, and she's like, she's kind of shaking, right, wide-eyed and everything. And I, you know, I just grab her, hold her hand. Everything's fine. We're just, you know, middle of the night, we're just hanging out. Here's the bed. We're fine. And she kind of, I hope this is going to translate over Zoom, but she kind of turns and looks at me, right? I'm over here. You could imagine. She turns and she looks at me, right? And then she looks behind me, and then she points like that, just wide-eyed, and I'll get the finger in there. She points like that over my shoulder. So, so I was like, damn it, because you've got to look now, right? You've got to. Who's not going to turn and look, Because here's the thing: 99 out of 100 times, I know she's just dreaming, right? I know it's fake, and I don't necessarily believe in vampires and goblins and all that sort of thing. But I was like, what if this is the one time where it's not fake, So, I did that thing where I'm just like, all right, it's okay. And I slowly turn, and I turn, and I turn, and I turn. Oh, and thank God, of course, there's nothing there. But at the time, it was terrifying. And that's where a lot of the ideas for this come from. One person can see or hear these things, and they see them just like I'm looking at you right now, and the other person can't. And there you go. Do you see it?
So this being a COVID-made film, was it natural for you to do a horror comedy almost, or is this something this is a genre that you always work in and you've done other films in?
I guess I'd consider myself a genre filmmaker. I love horror. I love sci-fi. I have a film I did 2 years ago called Murder Ballad, which was sort of like a gothic horror piece. And I also write. I'm also a writer, so I've written horror screenplays and horror TV pilots, stuff like that. So I really like genre stuff. Anything in that sort of that realm of like exciting, sort of thrilling stuff is definitely my sweet spot. And so it was sort of natural to do this. I think what I like about what was fun about doing this one was we were able to sort of involve some more humor in it, which is great. And that's definitely my wife's creative bag. She loves humor. So when she read the script, she just kind of looked at me and started laughing because she knew what I was doing, So we just had fun, we had fun with it. That was the nice thing about doing something like that, because I think horror and comedy are so closely aligned. I've always talked to my wife about this, always saying that like they're both like engineered to give you some kind of like reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of thrill. One wants to scare you, the other wants to make you laugh, but it's very, very vocal. It's very, one you scream and the other you laugh, but it's a very vocal, intense reaction that other films, other genres of film stories don't necessarily do. Which is not to say that horror and comedy are any better than those genres, but I do think it's an advantage that those two genres have. Yeah. Is that those are the two genres where you're either grabbing onto somebody's arm because you're scared, or you're grabbing onto somebody's arm because you're laughing and you want to know that they're laughing too, and those are the only two genres where you can do that, I mean, I guess you could make out during like a romantic movie, but so there's three, yeah, so that was fun. That was fun to do.
Oh, wow. So you being in California right now, what is your background in terms of filmmaking? Did you go to college? You learned from something else? What is your background?
So I started making movies in high school. I made like short films on a Super 8 camera.
Oh, wow.
I think it was my family's old Super 8 camera. That was fun. I'll tell you. I kind of miss those Super 8 days. I know there's like a handful of facilities that still process it. I think it may say
a handful.
There's a handful. Yeah, there's one in I know there's one in LA, in North Hollywood, I think, that does. But I haven't shot Super 8 in so long and had it processed in so long. So I'd love to reintroduce myself to that process because it was so fun. But that was, there was something really cool about learning filmmaking. I mean, I didn't grow up in the 60s or 70s or anything when Super 8 was what was the predominant home movie era or anything like that. But it was still cool to work with that kind of technology. The technology that was very much like you have there we go. We keep returning to the same themes. You have a limited amount of time. You have a limited amount of material in this case, right?
Yep.
You can't just shoot as much as you want. It's not. I mean, I can imagine having my Super 8 camera when I was in high school, and then realizing that my phone in the future could shoot the daylights out of my, you know what I mean? Like that would have been crazy to think about. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, it was very cool to learn filmmaking, my first steps into filmmaking on that process, where I had the little mini Super 8 Steenbeck that you loop the film in after you get a process and
Oh yeah.
cut the actual film, and tape it or glue it together. And then when you held up your little reel of Super 8 film, that was the film. Here it is. It's in my hand, There was a finite amount of takes you could do. I mean, I guess if you had limited financial resources, you could do whatever you want. But in high school or whatever, I certainly wasn't at that point. So you take the little cartridges, they were just like, great. I get to tell a story with this little Super 8 cartridge, And so that was like my first foray into it. I also remember I had a video camera too. And I think I did a little bit of stuff with that as well, but it was, primitive sort of stuff too, home movie camera quality,
Yeah.
nothing like what we have today, obviously. But so those were my first forays into filmmaking. And then I went to film school. I went to NYU, and
Okay.
that's where I guess we worked our butts off to really make a lot of shorts. The nice thing about that was probably the nicest thing about it is they just force you to make so much stuff. I mean, hey, it's your first semester here. Great. Give us 5 short films in one semester, Okay, great. All right. I got to write it. I got to cast it. I got to shoot it, and like anything, through repetition, you learn, your first one, maybe not so great, second one, ooh, you're great. And now you've arrived because your second one is great. And then your third one is not great. And so you got this battle between, you know what I mean? And so it was really fun. It was fun to meet other like-minded filmmakers in your, whatever, your early 20s or whatever, at that age, college age. And it was fun to be around enthusiastic people who cared about the films that you did, and to learn and to shoot student films in New York City, which was fantastic. A really great place to do that. And so that's where I went to school. I moved out to I lived in LA for a little while, in New York for a while after that, but then I moved out to Los Angeles. Did every sort of get coffee, answer phone job in Hollywood you can think of. You know what I mean?
I thought that was what you were about to say. I was like, good job.
Absolutely. I got producer's coffee. I answered the phone. I made appointments, and all of that stuff. For years I did that. During that time is when I didn't realize it at the time. I thought I was just sort of networking and working in Hollywood. But that's when you really start experiencing the stories that you're going to write later. You know what I mean? Some people are able to lock into that at a very young age. You know what I mean? Obviously, somebody like Orson Welles or whatever, Francois Truffaut. But other people, a lot of people, it takes time. And a lot of people, you don't realize that that period in your life of young adulthood is you're experiencing a lot. You're friends, you have relationships certainly inform so much of your writing, so much of your character work. And it doesn't matter if you write genre stuff, I mean, relationships totally influence comedies and horror movies and sci-fi. They influence everything. And so I did that. That's what I was doing in LA for a really long time. And then I gradually drifted my way into copywriting as more of my day job. Then, getting coffee got lucrative only to a certain point, and answering phones and all that stuff. And it gets lucrative to a certain point. And then you're sort of like, all right, well, there's a end to this road right here. But where but yeah, what's the next step? What's the next level that you do? And for me, the next level was a combination of writing and filmmaking, going back to writing and filmmaking. This time, sort of like a more informed version of myself than I was when I was in film school. You know, I was in film school, I think I was really hyper focused on probably copying a lot of like my heroes. You know what I mean? Just sort of trying to do like an homage. You know, I really liked Alfred Hitchcock. I was going to try to do Alfred Hitchcock. You know what I mean? And I didn't really know who I was. And you know, and I didn't really know who I was. I didn't really know what my voice was. You know, and I feel like that's true with a lot of people who go into the arts. You know, whether you're write songs or movies or plays or you know whatever poetry. I feel like your heroes have such a strong influence on you when you're starting out that you start off by trying to be them, right? And you don't, maybe you don't realize it. Maybe you're if you're lucky, you're fortunate enough to realize that's what you're doing. If you're not, you spend a lot of time trying to be this person that you respect so much. And then it takes a really long time to be like, wait a second, who am I? Like, what is my voice? What's my contribution to this whole thing? I mean, you know, Alfred Hitchcock is great. He's irreplaceable, but we don't need Alfred Hitchcock Part 2. You know what I mean? Like we had the first one and he was wonderful. You know, like we don't need like a lesser version of that. You know, like how about you try and do something else that's possibly influenced by him or inspired by him or whatever, but don't just try to be him. You know, and so I think that's kind of where I started to really kind of find my groove and find my voice was deciding to be me, you know, and deciding to stop being my heroes the way I did in film school. And now as like an adult, I was like, I want to be me. I want to write stories that I want to write and that I want to see, you know, and that I don't see get told, you know. And that was one of the fun things doing Do You See It was I didn't see a lot of shorts that had that nice blend of comedy and horror where it kind of does that switch on you. You know what I mean? They're horror comedies, you know, like Shaun of the Dead and that sort of thing. And those are fantastic. But I was really keen on welcoming the audience with like kind of a warm, sort of friendly, funny atmosphere. And then start to pull the rug out from underneath them and remind them that, oh, this is actually a horror film, you know, it's not a comedy, you know. And so that you twist it and you start off kind of funny and then you end up scary, you know, seeing if you can genuinely make people laugh in the first half and you genuinely make people scared in the second half, you know. And that was something I hadn't seen too much of, short film wise, or you know, I always love it when a feature film is fortunate enough to do that. And there are not a lot of those either, but it was something I was keen on doing. And you know, you got to follow that muse, and you're sort of like when you're really sort of tied into who you are and what your voice is, what you want to do, you just follow the muse, and you're like, all right, let's see what happens. And that's kind of how we got to where we're at.
Well, no, that's a good point, because you do exactly what you just said, which is your film starts off as funny. And when you're watching a film about paranormal investigators, you always have a little bit of these are some funny characters because they're paranormal investigators. Cool. But by the end, you do pull it from underneath them and it gets scary and it becomes a horror film. That's actually, you're absolutely right. I was like, oh yeah. Okay, I see it now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting occupation. I don't know. I don't know what you would list it as in your, you know, when you file your taxes with the IRS. I mean, I guess you say ghost hunter. I don't know.
Yes, I think some of the people I know who are ghost hunters would, because I've actually been on lots of investigations with multiple different groups. Now I'm usually the filmmaker, so I'm just filming everything. So I'm not the person who's experiencing all the paranormal stuff. So right. I'm the guy who's just the practical guy. Say just.
I totally get it. It's a fascinating bunch of people, isn't it?
It is.
My wife and I used to rewatch some of the shows. You know, we used to watch. I mean, we don't anymore, but we used to watch Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters, and there's a lot of them. You know,
there are a lot of them.
Celebrity ghost stories, and it's honestly, it's just a fascination. It's a curiosity to me. I just like, wow, this is you know, it's just a really interesting world that these people inhabit. You know, I mean, it's so different from what I encounter every day. You know, I feel like it's different from most people encounter every day. Right? Most people go to work, and it's a fairly. I mean, I'm in a creative space, so it's a little funny and a little goofy and a little silly sometimes, but it still feels like work. That to me, I don't know if that would feel like work. I mean, I respect it, but I just I do respect it. I just wonder, you know, if you're in the dark and you're looking for ghosts, does it ever feel like you're like, you know, it's got to feel differently than punching the clock and sending emails, right, and that sort of stuff, right? It's gotta
Yeah. Oh my God, you gotta have to. I'm gonna have to start thinking about all the stuff I did back in my past because, like you, I went to film school, but I went to for critique and analysis of film. So
awesome.
I ended up focusing on that as my my film career. But now I run a film festival. So
yeah, that's great. You know what? It's amazing how you end up there. That's fantastic. No, you know, I love stories like that because it's sort of like it's so fascinating. It's like that John Lennon quote, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, right? You know, you think you start off at one point and you think you're like, oh, I'm gonna end up right over at that point because that's where I want to go. And then life is just gonna throw you a ton of curveballs and you're gonna end up way over here. And you're like, how did I end up over here? You know? But that's awesome. I love film analysis and film criticism and all that stuff. That's such a cool thing to study. That's great. That's awesome.
And like you, I started shooting on Super 8 and 16 millimeter, and then we had to think about what we're going to shoot because we don't have a whole bunch of film. And even if I had a bunch of film, I still have to send it off to get developed. So it was, you know, us college kids, we couldn't afford a whole lot of waste in film.
Absolutely, they were right. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong about this, but there were a lot of moments when you were doing that was sort of like that Ed Wood movie, the Tim Burton's Ed Wood, right, where you did one take, and then something clearly was off, and somebody's like, "Do you want to do another take?" And you're like, "No, I think we got it. I think we got it. Well, let's just move on. I'm sure it'll look fine." You know,
my God, and and you know, like what you did with your film, you shot it during COVID, and you shot the cameras are so much more easily accessible, and you're able to shoot stuff like that. And even though you had 90 minutes each day to shoot it,
yeah,
you had time constraints in that respect. But you came out with a film that looks amazing and is very effective. Because I'll tell this a lot of people I talk to. It's like I don't read what the films are about before I see them. I literally I have a title and I watch the film because I like to think that I don't need to read the synopsis to get a filmmaker's film. I think that they need to be able to have all of that in the film while I'm watching it. Plus, I love to be surprised. So
that's such a great point. Wow, that's very cool. I like that a lot. That's a great technique. You know, because you're right. I mean, you're not going to have you know, when you're watching a film, you're not going to have the synopsis with you, right? You're going to, you know, and it's not like the synopsis is supposed to make up for anything that you don't understand. No offense to the super uber talented Christopher Nolan, fantastic filmmaker, one of my heroes. However, I have to admit, when I was watching Tenet, I got a little lost, and I opened the Wikipedia for it on my phone. And I started to look at it. I was like, "Oh, so that's what happened. Okay, cool. All right, that's great. You know, that sounds really interesting. Fantastic. You know, again, no disrespect, Christopher Nolan. You're one of brilliant filmmaker and a hero of mine. But you know, but it shouldn't be that way, right? I mean, it should be one of those things where you should, you know, where you're right. You know, you just watch the film and let the film tell the story, right? And it shouldn't be a case where you look at the cover letter or the synopsis or anything like that and be like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to get out of it. It's like, well, let's see what I get out of it. Let's just start it and let's find out. Let's find out what this is, you know. And then afterwards you can consult the material and see if that person is either totally right or like really way off base, you know, and didn't quite make the movie they said or thought they did. Not necessarily means that it's not good. It just means that it's a lot different than the movie they think they made.
So
Right?
I do want to ask you this, because I do look at the posters before I actually watch the film, and I really liked your poster. I want to know, did you design that as well while in COVID, or did you have someone design it? I mean, what was the inspiration for that poster?
Yeah. So is that the illustrated one, the
Yes.
hand-drawn one? Yeah, that one's great. So that was somebody I found online, and I really liked his work. He just had like a knack for, his whole thing was like 80s VHS
Yeah.
box cover art, that sort of thing. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect, you know. So we talked, and I told him, you know, I was thinking, I I was feeling, you know, some of the early Friday the 13th
Oh,
VHS box covers. I was thinking something like that. They always had this kind of like woodsy thing when people are kind of looking around, kind of scared. And then I also thought, all right, I like that, but I also like the first Nightmare on Elm Street poster, the first one from 1984, Wes Craven's, and it had just like a really great hand drawn, kind of an intense look. But there was something in between those worlds, that aesthetic, that I really wanted to capture. And that was sort of like the blueprint that I gave him. I was like, listen, I don't want to give you too much because I want you to be creative. You know, I want you to, you know, and I find that that's not a bad way to live life, and not a bad way to direct or work with other people, is give them enough direction so that they understand what you need, but then let them do their thing, right? I mean, you brought them here for a reason, right? And sometimes I think their temptation is to get in there as the head of a team or head of a project. Sometimes the temptation is to really be hands-on and kind of micromanage. And it's kind of like it's sort of like a war within yourself to be like, no, okay, come on. This is why you brought these people here. You respect their talent, you respect their creative mind. You are a collaborator. You know, let these people collaborate. Let them you know, because people will surprise you, and people will bring a lot of wonderful improvised moments that you didn't plan on. And a lot of times those are the bits that people like the most. They're like, oh, I love that bit that you wrote. And you're like, well, technically I didn't write that line. That was actually improvised by the actor. But thank you. It's I will tell them that you like it, you know? Which is not to say that, you know, you don't want to involve yourself. I mean, obviously there are times when you do want to get in there, and if things are veering a little too far off course with what you're looking for. But in general, it's really nice to let people have that freedom, and so that's what I wanted him to have. I gave him those ideas as a template, you know, he knew I wanted 80s, I wanted horror, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, that sort of thing, and go for it, and just do your thing, and I trust you, and come back. And so he did. And the first one, I was like, this is great, you know. Like I may have had like one tiny tweak to it or whatever, the first draft he showed me, but I just loved it from the second I saw it. I was like, oh, this is awesome. So yeah
very effective poster. That's why I said I had to make comment on it. So, certain posters, you know, really, you know, draw my eye, and that was one of them. So,
oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm saying
excellent job.
I'm saying thank you, and meanwhile the other guy actually drew it, but I'll take credit for him. No, he's wonderful. Stephen Gillian, I think. Hopefully I got that right. If I did not, I'm sorry, Stephen. I will give you a shout out on Instagram. Yeah.
Oh, I would like to ask you at least one more final question. I want to know, because you shot this in your own house during COVID, was there any funny moment that you can relate to us, that you don't mind relating to us, that happened while making this film?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So, you know, it's what I think that you know, probably, you know, some of the funnier stuff is just the outtakes that you see, you know, like, so, all right, as you said, you make this during quarantine, right? and I'm the one person band, and so it's fine because I feel comfortable doing it. I have enough confidence to do it, but it also means that there are limitations. I mean, nobody's perfect, and I'm far from perfect, and so you try your best, but there are faces that the human face makes that you don't think you make, but you make them, and and so you or there's certain acting performances that are best certainly left on the cutting room floor, put into the trash, and deleted, and then hiring an IT person to make sure that it's deleted permanently, because it's funny because I'll be acting in something and with my wife, and we'll do a take, and I'll be like, "No, it was pretty good. I feel good about that," and then you look at playback and you're like, "Oh God," you're like, "Oh my God, does my face really do that?" What am I doing? Why am I making that face? And you're like, and then you start to think back to you're like, do I always do that with my face? Like, have I always done that, or do I have a twitch that I'm developing right now? Like, what is it? The stress? So it's a lot of it was that was where a lot of the humor was for me, was just you would do takes and you think, ooh, this was the keeper, and then you just review the playback, and just something totally ridiculous. Just the worst face, the worst acting, the worst whatever it was. You whatever you thought was going in your head that was working, it was not working, and so you're just like, all right, so I guess we're doing another take of that one then, yeah. So that was probably the thing that came up a few times. Was just being surprised by that. That art will always surprise you that way. And then I think besides that, it was pretty. I guess it was pretty smooth sailing. Besides that, I think that I think that one of the benefits of working together on something like this is that my wife and I both have a good sense of humor. So we're honest with each other, and we goof around a lot. And if somebody needed to do another take, we weren't shy about being like, why don't we do that again? Really? What was wrong with it? Let's just do it again. We just for safety. Everything was for safety. Just in case. You never know, right? You never know. I'm sure all the other takes are brilliant, but let's one more just for safety. So yeah, that was probably the.
Oh my God,
that happened.
Yeah. All right. So, is there anything else you would like to tell the audience to leave them with about your film, or would you like to? You don't have to do that, or you can tell me a little bit about whatever project you have coming up next.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do a very quick little bit of both. I would say that I hope they find the first half of Do You See It funny, and I will say, actually, really quickly, as a dramatic writer, or I guess I would consider myself a dramatic writer, whatever, I don't know, whatever kind of writer I am, I've always perceived myself that way. I love it when I'm able to pull off jokes. You know what I mean? It's fabulous. It's because it's one of those things where, like, I feel like if I am able to make people laugh, oh God, feels incredible, because I'm not supposed to be able to do that. Like, people go into a scary movie and they're like, well, I'm not going to laugh. I'm going to be scared. And so when you make people laugh, and you're not supposed to, or it's not required, I should say, it just, the feeling is just so good. You're like, oh, they didn't need it, but I gave it to them anyway, and it worked. Yes. So so I hope they find it at the beginning funny, and then I hope they get a little creeped out by the end. And then in terms of future projects, I have another short that I'm working on the sound mix for right now. It's a sci-fi thriller short called Mad Machine, and it's and hopefully we'll get that finished soon and out soon as well. Yeah, I'm excited for that one too.
Excellent. Well, I wish, or everyone here, Something Wicked wishes your film a very successful festival run. I don't know how long you plan on sending your film out to film festivals, but we wish it a successful run. Please let us know about any of your future projects because we'll promote them as much as possible. Because we like to post about what you guys are doing after it comes to our festival. So by all means, let us know about all that. And it was a pleasure talking to you about your film.
Likewise.
And I remembered the poster. I've been forgetting to ask about the certain posters that I absolutely loved. So I meant to do it on yours. I remember it. So
awesome.
I'm glad I was able to do that.
Awesome. I love it. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to talk to you and meet you. I'm thrilled and honored to be included in the festival, and yeah, can't wait for people to see it. So thank you again.